Welcome to the Oso Archery Podcast. Whether it's your first buck, first bugle, or 100th bugle, we're here to learn, grow, and hunt together. This isn't just archery. This is Oso Archery. Earned, never given. All right. Welcome, everybody. This is the Oso Archery Podcast, and this is the September is Calling series.
So today on this episode, we got Joe Giglia from the Elk Bros. He's an elk hunter out of New Mexico. He's a guide, and he's been hunting elk for 40 years, so he's probably got some pretty good knowledge to give us today.
That's a good assumption right there, dude.
That's the only one we got.
I'll give you what I have, man. Don't worry about it. I'll give you what I have. I don't hold back, all right?
We appreciate you coming on today and finding some time for us. We know you're a busy guy.
It's all good, man. I hope I'm not blowing you guys out. I'm trying to fix my audio there. No, glad to be on for you, Matt.
You sound pretty good.
Yeah, it sounds pretty good over here.
Awesome.
So I guess let's just get into it. You want to give us a little backstory on how you got into elk hunting and a little bit about yourself?
So, Joe Giglia, I'm the CEO of Elk Bros and Elk Bros Adventures. I produce the Elk Bros Blue Collar Elk Hunting podcast. I am also the creator of our Base Camp online elk hunting course. So I stay pretty daggone busy with everything, man.
That sounds like a lot of work right there.
Yeah. Plus my wife wants to make sure I get everything else done, right? So
it's a hard balance with everything.
We know how that goes.
So basically, you know, I'm from back east, Podunk, North Carolina. Kid raised hunting squirrel, coon, bullfrogs, everything and anything that you could hunt, mourning doves at home. That's basically how we put food on the table as a kid. Had a large family. And I came out to New Mexico, the only person in my family to ever go to college. I didn't expect that, but my real dad was a vet, and he passed away when I was 13. And so I ended up getting veterans benefits that paid for me to go to college, man, and didn't know what to expect. Came out to New Mexico with $1,500 in the bottom of each shoe because I wasn't going to let any city boy take my money. Came out here, met my wife and my wife to be while I was in college. We got married at 20, and I've been here ever since. And you know, hunting has always been a part of my life, and I've been shooting the bow since I was a kid. And, you know, I come from a shotgun family, you know, back east, you know, you do a lot with shotguns. And then, you know, you always had your squirrel gun too, your 22. But I was the oddball of the family. I hunted everything with the bow most of the time. And when I came out here and I told my wife, let's get married. She's like, well, we ain't got jobs. How are we going to survive? You know, and I'm like, look, as long as I have a tent, as long as I have my bow, we're going to eat, got a place to live, and which is a real attractive thing to tell a woman, you know, when...
Yeah, I bet she loved that.
She's like, I want to marry this guy.
Oh, what a sucker, because she married me anyway, right? So, no, dude, and so it was actually being in the woods, hunting deer, that I saw my first elk. And when I saw it, I was actually backed against a tree, and it was a cow elk, and she came by me with it within arm's distance, man. I mean, it was the coolest experience of my life. And when I saw that elk, I was like, and I'm hunting deer. I mean, I could eat all winter off that booger, you know? So, I was part of a bow hunting club, and I think at this time, I'm in college, or I'm about 19 years old. I was part of a bow hunter club there in Las Vegas, New Mexico, and I'm an instinctive shooter. Always have been. I shoot fingers, shoot compound, but it's a compound bow, you know, fingers, no sights. And we would have these competitions all the time. And long story short, one of the guys, I was always winning this competition, and one of the guys in there was, he was like, dude, man, he says, you're a good shot. He says, you know, have you ever been elk hunting? I was like, no, I've never been yet. You know, and he's like, well, if you'd like to go, we're heading up. We got the horses. We got everything. You know, I'd love to have you. Just get your license and come on. And that was my first elk hunt at 19 years old. Went up into the Pecos Wilderness, had no clue what I was doing, and ended up killing my first cow elk at 40 yards. And the funniest part about that story is I'm going through, now we're riding horseback, and you're going through all busting brush and stuff, and I just figured I'm just going to wait where I think animals are. I look for their trails, look for their food, look for the track, and just use my hunting skill set, right? And I come down to this area and I sit on a log waiting, and it's getting towards evening, and I hear this deer comes out at first and comes by me, and didn't have a deer tag, and it like stayed by me at 20 yards forever. So I was like, okay, this is a good sign. And then I hear a noise, and this cow elk comes out on the trail that I was overlooking, and she starts coming out, and she's about 35, 40 yards away. And so I go to knock an arrow, and I have no arrow rest. It's been ripped off from the ride, I guess.
Oh, no.
Yeah. And so
The horse must have ate it.
so I was like, man, but a country boy can survive, right? And I've shot off plenty of recurves and stuff like that. So I just stuck my finger up, laid my arrow on it, pulled back, put it on that cow, and drilled her and that was my first elk. And that had me hooked from that moment on. And I've been hunting elk ever since. And so this is my 43rd season. And at first, when I first started hunting elk, didn't know anything about the language. I hunted them as the animal they were, like I would hunt deer or anything else, right? And use this schnoz a lot, man. They have a strong smell. So I would actually get in areas where I would, where I was finding sign of elk, and I would work crosswind so that I could see in front of me. And if I caught a scent, then I'd turn and start working into the scent of the elk. And that worked great for me as far as being able to get into them, and then just using my stalking abilities. But being around elk, I could hear the conversation. I could hear the language, and I had used diaphragm calls for turkey hunting. And so I actually started using my turkey diaphragm calls to mimic and reproduce the sounds of the elk. And that changed the game. Totally.
So you learned that all on your own. You didn't learn from anybody else on the calling.
Nah, there's, when you live in rural New Mexico, no, we really didn't have anybody. At that time, there were very few people that were calling. You had your Larry D. Joneses, you had your Wayne Carltons and stuff like that. And, I read stuff in magazines, but I never really heard anybody do it or learned from anybody. It was just something that I started doing myself. And, it was pretty cool because, you'd get in amongst them, and it changed the game because before I was in search mode, right? And what started happening was when I started learning the language, started calling, then they were looking for me. So animals that I may have been going by for all those years were now coming into me that I might have missed, right? So,
and your encounters started going up dramatically, huh?
Absolutely, man.
Yeah,
totally. And it's really cool because, when you get in amongst the cows and stuff like that, and you're listening to all those variances in the cow talk, for me, the bulls were making the main racket, and I was after the bulls. So the first thing I was doing was mimicking the bulls. That just made sense. Well, if the bull's saying something, I got to do what they're doing. And so I learned to bugle, and man, that really made it good on locating animals and being able to get in on them, right? And then I learned to whatever they were giving me, I was just trying to give that back. They were just teaching me the whole time. And it's funny because my brother-in-law, Chav, who's been my hunting partner for 40 years, we would be split up once I'd have them located, and you can see the herd and we're moving in on them. I'd be in an area where Chav couldn't see me, and me and the bull and the cows, we'd be on the opposite side of a little drainage or something. And Chav would be over trying to work in to get into a different angle. And me and the bull would just be going back and forth, like that. And I came over to him after I had shot the bull and he had blown out. And I I called Chav in. I used like a double bugle to call him in. And I called Chav to me. I was like, dude, did you see that? And he goes, no, I heard was a bunch of noise. I said, did you hear me chuckling back and forth with that dude? And he goes, I thought it was the elk the whole time, so yeah. So I knew that I had something, and I knew that I was reproducing like that. And that was really the first bull that I killed, pulling them in like that. Right. So it has just been a 40-year adventure and lesson, learning from these critters. And look, I'm in my 43rd season. I learn something new from these critters every year, right?
Yeah. You never know it all.
Yeah, it's always a learning game.
Nah, and once you think you not like, there's a lot of good knowledge that I have that can put me in positions, but right when you think you have something nailed, they switch
throw
it
you a
up.
curveball.
Yeah,
Yep.
absolutely, man. So, I did that, and then I was killing elk every year, and the big deal for me, I never really thought about that, like in the sense of how other people think about it. It was that I was a teacher. That was my profession. I was a teacher and a coach, and we're trying to raise. Me and my wife had a little one at 24, 4 years after we were married, and making, teachers pay, you don't make a whole lot of money, and you got bills and you got everything. And here I am spending money on tags and going out. And, for me, it was important to always bring food home. And that was why I went out there. And, so when other people started talking about my skill set, they're like, wow, you kill an elk every year. And I'm like, well, I thought I was supposed to do that. That's what I'm out there to do, man. I hunted hungry, y'all. So, it was great, man. My family, my daughters were raised on elk meat, but other people, as they started to notice my skill set, then, that's when really bow hunting, as far as in being guiding bow hunters, at first, a lot of these outfitters really weren't big on bow hunters. They just saw the bow as something that really shouldn't be using to hunt elk, that it could wound them and everything like that. But
right.
There started to be a switch in that, right? And as people were doing it, as those people that, you got to give a lot of credit, man, to those guys, to Mr. Walker, to Wayne Carlton, to Larry D. Jones, as these guys started to, put it in the mainstream, it changed those viewpoints, and there were more people doing it. And then, guides and outfitters were seeing guys just, put elk down, any animal down with a bow, and being impressed by it. So as that started to change, I had outfitters, and now bow hunters are looking to hunt these hunts. And I had outfitters in the area that knew my skill set, and so hired me as a guide to be able to help them be successful out there, because most of your guides at the time were rifle guys. There wasn't a whole lot of bow guys, right? So I was able to hunt my season, which would be just the first 5 days, and then I would spend the rest of the time guiding, and I would guide the archery season, and then we'd get into the rifle season. And the cool thing about that was, when I was a bow hunter, you saw a limited part of the elk circle, right? And understanding the animal. But once you start going from September all the way to January, you see that whole dynamic of, the herd dynamics of the bulls and the bachelor groups and the cows. And then, from large groups to smaller groups, to breaking off to have their calves, to then coming together to protect those calves, to then the bulls splitting them up, so they can have their harems. And, the bulls, what they were doing with their pecking order, because, man, they were all buddy for a while sticking together. And then all of a sudden they just don't like each other, because the gals are involved. And then, the breeding season comes in, and then they're off again, and they're back with the boys, split up, and they just want to go somewhere else and let the herd do the herd thing. So it was really cool how you get to see all of that. And
you learn a lot about their behavior.
Absolutely, man. What they want, where they want to be, at different times of the year, how far they travel, you know, what you should be looking for when you are scouting and getting ready for a particular type of season, what the strategies are and how they're different from where, you're archery hunting to where you're rifle hunting, especially, if you're rifle hunting that October time, it's just bow hunter mentality, right? Because you still got bulls screaming, but then, you start getting November, December and stuff like that. That's a totally different and, type of strategy on that. So it really, really helped round me out. And, that continued to progress. And what's interesting how Elk Bros came about was I was guiding some guys. I had a very good friend that I coached, and I coached his daughter and his son in track and field, and he was a local outfitter. And there was some things that happened inside schools and stuff that that it was hard to get income for sports programs. And so as a head coach, he was like, Joe, man, you come guide for me. I'll write you a check for the kids. I'll pay you. You can buy whatever you need for the kids and, bring somebody to cook and stuff. And we'll make sure the kids are taken care of. So we started doing that for a number of years. And some of the guys that I met in those camps became good friends of mine. Well, that great friend of mine, Carl Gamage, he passed away in 2014. And when he passed away, it took a big toll out on me. I mean, he was like a father and a brother figure. And one of the guys that I had guided for a number of years on his place, Gilbert Ornelas, Gilbert told me, he said, man, we got to keep this going just to honor Carl, this hunt every year. And so I started doing something with him and with some clients that he would bring in. And as I was doing that, and I was actually guiding in other ranches and stuff like that, some of the guys I were guiding, they said, Joe, man, they were like, you don't just guide. He said, you teach us, you coach us,
Yeah.
and you got to do something with all this knowledge. And I mean, you're talking about my first animal at 19, and now I'm like right about in my end of my 40s and 50s right there, right? And so, I was like, what do I do with that? I don't want to, I'm too ADD to write and sit in front of a typewriter and all that stuff. And one day I saw an online elk hunting course made by Corey Jacobson. And when I saw the online course, that's what he was doing. Well, shoot, I was already doing that for my students at school. I taught video production, graphic design, web design, broadcasting. That was my wheelhouse. Plus I was coaching and I was hunting. So I just took everything that I naturally do. And I was like, well, I can do that. So I called up the dudes and I said, look, I'm going to go ahead and make a business. I got the name. I'm already doing this. I'm going to create an online course. And it's going to be called Elk Bros. And I told Gil, I said, Gil, man, I was like, if I'm going to do this course, we're going to have to let people know it exists. Because if you just put it on the internet, it's like a tree in the forest, right? I said, I heard about this thing called a podcast. And this is when podcasts are just starting out. YouTube was huge, right? But podcasts were first starting out. And Gil's like, dude, I'm all in, man. He said, they pay me to talk. So we actually started the podcast to have our own elk camp with our group of dudes and talk about elk hunting and to help teach people about elk hunting and basically to build our target audience so people would know about our course. The interesting thing is if you ever really hear me on our show, you hardly ever to never hear me talk about our course,
Yeah, not very often. I listen to you guys all the time. I love your guys' content. It's great.
Thank you, Matt. Thank you. Appreciate that, dude. So, Gil will throw it out there. Just, I don't know. It just for me, if I'm teaching people, it's even though that was the original purpose of it, and I knew that's how people would get to know about us. It just, for me, it's hard. I just have a difficult time doing that. I figure Then go to our website, then, and you still don't really see me pushing or talking about it that much, right?
Well, most people, when they're really in search of getting better, they'll look for it. They won't be. It doesn't need to be pushed on them.
Yeah, you're right. It's just a lot of people don't know that those types of courses exist, right? And that's the only thing. And so here we're doing the course, we're doing the podcast, and then people wanted merch from us, man. They wanted Elk Bros this and Elk Bros that. And so we started creating that. We developed a store. And, when we did that, we were like, okay, we can do some giveaways and stuff like that with other people. And we try to promote ourselves. And so we did a hunt with the Elk Bros where somebody could win a hunt and come into camp with us, right? Because we had all these people saying, I'd love to hunt with you. And we're like, okay, let's try something like that. And the first one, man, the first guy that we had in our camp is actually one of my coaches now. And it was such a tremendous experience. He was so awesome. When he won the hunt, he got so shook up when he found out he won the hunt that he put gas in his diesel truck.
What a way to start the day.
That's funny.
So, and so from that, and what was going on the sidelines was I became a coach for Hunt Wars. There's a story to how that happened, but I ended up coaching Hunt Wars. So I call them my athletes. I'm taking the competitors in Hunt Wars that may have never hunted elk in their life. In fact, we've had a lot of those, or they haven't done a whole lot of archery elk, or their skill sets are low. And I coach them months before they ever get to camp for the Hunt Wars competition. So they now get there with a skill set. So I'm doing this on one side, and then I'm guiding at a prestigious ranch here, and they're like, wanted me to be part of a program where I started teaching and coaching young guides. So I started doing that, right? And as all of this was going and we did the hunt with the Elk Bros, I was like, man, we could do more than just one person in camp and help teach them. And we had people like, man, I'd love to, they're calling us like, can I pay you to take me hunting? This kind of stuff. And
hey, I've thought about that.
Did you really?
I've thought about asking.
Well, and that's cool and it's complimentary, man. I love it. But there's only so many days in September, right?
Yeah.
And so the whole logistics of it. And so things just, I swear, God does things, crazy things, man. He just opens doors. And next thing I know, one of my buddies that coached with me, that actually also guided with me with Carl, became, he started running a ranch. He's like, Joe, he says, we get all these tags, man. He said, you could buy the tags and then you would have so many archery tags that you could run a camp, right? And so that's what we did. We created Elk Bros Adventures where somebody could buy a hunt with us and we could give them an education. And so this education, dude, was for like months prior to them getting to camp before they got boots on the ground with what I called my success squad, my other coaches in physical fitness, in gear, in prepping your bow and setups and calling, failure points. All of my guys are working with these people like I was working with Hunt Wars and like I was working with my guides. They're working with those people and getting them ready. And then when they came to camp, instead of a guide, they have a coach with them, right?
Yeah. That's the ultimate learning curve right there.
Absolutely, man. And it's about empowering, not enabling. So this is the birth of Elk Bros Adventures and a totally different model that is revolutionary, right? And, you think about it, man. I have guys that were paying up to $20,000 for me to guide them on a ranch. Now, fortunately, I'm never been a point and shoot type of coach, or guide. I'm always teaching, always sharing the passion. But most guys are like, put them behind you, get them there, get them the opportunity, get the animal. We do,
send them home,
and then they're out of there. They learn nothing. Yeah, they learn nothing from that. And to me, that's not what the hunt's about. The hunt shouldn't be about. The goal is absolutely the kill, but it shouldn't be about only the kill. It shouldn't be about inches. And
Right.
It should be about the experience. It should be, about that intimacy. It should be about the memory, the camaraderie, all of that we love about a hunt, right?
The most important part.
Yeah, absolutely. It's those hard hunts, those difficult hunts that you always remember. I mean, I've taken it's like 37, 38 go in the last 40 years, right? And with my bow, public land, but there's certain ones of those that I remember, especially when other people are involved, but there's a lot of them that just meshes together, right?
Yeah.
It goes like that. And it's time for me to help other people have those experiences and to share that knowledge and get them to, and for me to create other ambassadors about what we're doing out there, to teach people how to understand the ethics, how to understand the traditions and the etiquette and all those things that make it better for all of us out in the woods, and if I can do that, because right now, what happened was we had grandpa, we had dad, we had uncle, all that would teach us. And it seems like that's not happening anymore. So
it's really not.
Yeah. So for people to learn, a lot of times they learn from the wrong people sometimes, right? And that's when you end up with stuff happening out there that make us all look bad and make hunting look bad. And the hunting community gets smaller and smaller and smaller, and people start looking, well, I don't want that. I'm a part of that circle. I love the animal that and people go like, how can you kill the animal that you just have so much passion for?
I've had people ask me that.
Yeah, all the time. But you know what? That animal didn't die from starvation. That animal didn't die from getting hit. That animal didn't die in a winter kill. That animal was honored in the hunt with the two of us in intimacy, in part of that circle, doing something that means something. To me, that's that animal fulfilling its destiny. That's what they were put on this earth for, right? And by me becoming the best at what I can, as far as shooting, as far as getting close, as far as putting on the best shot, by me doing that, I'm being responsible in honoring the hunt and honoring that animal. And that's critically important to me, right? And that's the only thing I can tell people is that, and for me, the food on my table
tastes good.
I went up there. I know what's on my table. It wasn't something where somebody else raised it and put steroids into it and slaughtered it, and then just, and you have no clue what went behind all of that.
There's a big disconnect between what people are eating and where it comes from.
Huge disconnect. And honestly, I really think that's where a lot of the things that happen in society today, a lot of these unneeded killings and crazy, stupid things that happen because people are not connected to that anymore.
Yeah, I agree 100%.
They don't see the cost. They don't see the value. They don't, they've never had to sit by an animal that's on its last breath while you're touching it and praying on it, right? And to feel that and to take that in, and it should have an effect on us. It should absolutely, but we should understand it, and every kid that was raised on a farm, they understood that, right?
Right.
They understood that part of that circle, and it's just that there's so many people that don't see that. I want my children to know and understand the consequences of everything that we do, the consequences of the choices we make in life and that are going to take the life of another animal, or in a lot of cases, another person, man. Right. So, I think that's important, but so that's how all of this came about. That's that long story right there how we got to Elk Bros. And I mean, a lot of things happen with a lot of choices and a lot of people and a lot of doors opening, because I have been absolutely surrounded by incredible individuals, man. I've had gifts in my life that I'm so fortunate. My wife being my first gift. I think my wife really helped me to understand me a whole lot more. Sometimes she doesn't understand me still, but
I was gonna say, I know that feeling.
yeah, but I none of this has been by myself. It's just I'm just somebody that, and I did this as a coach. You take what you're given and you find ways to be successful within that. You beg, borrow, steal, learn, and soak it all in, and then use those tool sets to help yourself be better and better and better, and
Always
to
be growing.
succeed. Yeah, absolutely, man. So that's what we do, man. That's what Elk Bros does. And now we went from public land having to do that hunt with 5 to 7 hunters now to where we have 2 properties where we are running 2 private land. We're running private land hunts on each one. We're doing coached hunts all during archery. In the rifle this year, we're doing our first coached rifle hunt, which I'm extremely excited about. And then the hunts after that, they're what we call teaching guide hunts. In other words, it's more of a guide mode, but I never want anybody with an Elk Bros coach or guide to ever feel like that it's not their hunt. I want them included in the process, the conversation, the strategies, never in the back seat. At the most, in the seat beside me as my partner, right? And when you have that kind of experience, it just heightens that for those people. It just takes them to a whole nother level, and they leave with something special. So that's what we do now. We have 2 private properties, and I'll tell you, in New Mexico, go to one of these units and a quality unit and try to buy a landowner tag, and it can cost you anywhere from $6,000 to $15,000 for a tag.
Yeah, that's a lot.
Yeah, and where our properties are daggum awesome areas where our neighbors charge twice as much as we do. But like our hunt is either 9.5 or 10.5, depending on the high demand or not. But you're not just paying for a hunt, you're getting coached and taught prior to and then when you're there. So you're getting an education and you're getting the elk hunt and the experience there on quality prime time country, right?
You're getting a lot more info out of that.
Yeah. But let me tell you this though, guys. So again, you're talking to a teacher coach, right? I can't afford one of our hunts. So for me, that bothers me, and it's about opportunity. And I want people to be able to have that opportunity that don't have those kind of deep pockets. And so I created something called the Adventure Club, where, if you go to put in for states, like go try to put in for Utah and what it's going to cost you just to put in. And if you don't draw, your money just goes, it's gone, right? Bye. So what I did was I started the Adventure Club, and for $325, they can become a member of that club. They get to receive my course, all of our Success Squad materials, discounts, free giveaways, and for every 32 members we get, we draw one of our private land hunts for every 32 members. Okay,
where's my wallet at?
So they get a 1 in 32 chance. So somebody is going to win at 10, and we've already had it. We already have one gentleman that's won one. We're waiting for our second group to sell out. For $325, they won a $10,000 hunt. And for those people that didn't draw it with a 1 in 32 opportunity, their money didn't just go bye-bye. They have still the knowledge, everything learning from us, the discount codes, and products that we give away. So they get
it's a great opportunity.
Yeah, absolutely. So that's my way of, if every time we get 32, we're drawing a hunt. Every time we get 32, we're drawing a hunt. If we sold all of our hunts that way, and the reason I did $325 in 32 is you take those numbers and it pays for our hunt. So it pays for all that I'm responsible for and paying my my guides. It's for everything that I need for everything that goes on during the hunt. So it's covered. So it doesn't bother me that somebody wins it for $325. In fact, it makes me extremely, extremely happy.
Yeah, because they're getting that tag for what 1/3 of what over-the-counter non-resident tag is.
Absolutely. And, you know, for the price of a landowner tag, less than, you know, you can have a coached hunt, and for a price of applying, you have an opportunity to win in our adventure club. So for me, it's about that opportunity and about the experience. That's
a win-win no matter what.
To me, it is, you know, and it helps me justify what we do, because that's just how I feel in my heart, right? I mean, you know, I know what people pay to be able to have this experience, but I want other people to have it myself. So,
well, let's give some of those guys a little bit of knowledge, and let's go run through some pre-rut calling tactics and some of the things that you do during that time of the year. We're talking, you know, maybe mid-August if you can get a tag that early, all the way through.
Yeah. So I have never okay, so we hunted in Canada about the 25th of August, 25th, 26th. But in Canada, I would say that everything shifts down. I think it has to do with the sun and everything like that. But
I feel like we're kind of on the same thing here in Washington. It seems like the rut kind of kicks in a little earlier.
Yeah. And so because of that, I think even that end of August is actually like our 1st of September. And generally you got those bulls that are screaming right there at the beginning. Like you can have those younger cows that come in heat at that time and set off a rut. You got bulls that are actually setting the pecking order up. If you are while they are still buddied up and they're not moving a whole lot, you can glass and kind of pattern them still at that time. You can still, you know, kind of, you know, keep them in an area and work those animals. But there's a point in time where, you know, those bulls are then trying to develop their pecking order, and then they're getting ready to start splitting off and going to look for cows. Now, the big bulls, they're just going to stay off. The big bulls are so smart, man, because you got to remember that everything's about survival with elk. So those big guys, it's not their first rodeo. They're not going to burn all that energy trying to, you know, keep those cows together right away. They're going to wait. They're going to let the young guys do it, let them herd them up, and they're going to wait till cows are coming in heat, and then they're going to go and start taking over and working them, right?
That's why I let my kids stack the firewood.
Exactly, dude. Not your first rodeo, bro.
It's not my first one.
Right. So, you know, early on, my early tactics, early in the season is, and I am very cow oriented.
Okay.
I use cow calls a lot. I use sounding like in that early part of the year, in that early part of the season, when I'm moving through areas, I'm giving a little cow call here and there. But a lot of people go, well, bulls aren't interested in cows at that time early on. But bulls are still interested in bulls. And a lot of those bulls are mewing at that time of year. You know, when you get them together, you'll hear them mew. And I've gone into areas and I just throw out that single. And let me make sure, original sound, I'm going to make sure I turn that on. I want to make sure you can hear me when I do this. You hear that?
Yep.
Okay. So I've heard bulls mew to each other very like, a lot like a calf sound in some ways, right? But when they're out, like I'll get an area where I can call over early in the morning, especially in the dark, and it has a little bit deeper tone to it, a little bit of maturity, right? And you'll get a reply. And I've had guys with me and they go, "Oh, that's a cow." I'm like, "No, it's not a cow. It's a bull." And they'll sound off where they're at. And as I start moving towards them, I'll give an occasional. That's it. Just like that. And you have to move through, and you got to pay attention, and you've got to be looking, and you got to be smelling, and you're looking for movement, and you're listening for sound, because they're not going to announce themselves. They're more quiet at this time of year. And I'll tell you, if you want to use another call that's going to bring them to you, the best call early season.
Yeah.
Because absolutely. Those bulls are doing all that raking early season. They identify there's another bull. They want to go see who that bull is. They want to know, what the pecking order is going to be. They, especially if it's somebody they don't know, what that bull is. They don't hear a voice. If they just hear the raking, they don't know who that bull is. Like you and I were talking, I could close my eyes, and between you two, I could tell you who's talking just from your difference in voices, right? Elk are the same way. Right? They identify each other by voice as well. So, but when I'm raking, they have no clue who I am. And so they come in the curiosity to go check that out.
Yeah,
So,
it's like hearing people clap. You can't tell who's clapping.
Absolutely. That's why the mews help you. Hard to tell who it is. You can't tell how big it is. Even when, as I go into the season and I'm starting to do things, a lot of times I don't want to identify my size to other animals that are responding, because I want to get their curiosity to other bulls that are responding. I just want to stay unknown, so that they have to come and find out who that is. And you do that with low vocalizations. You do it with, glunks. You do that with, chuckles. You can't tell how big a bull is by a chuckle, right?
No,
And
some of the biggest bulls have the worst chuckles.
And it's an inviting thing, a chuckle, right? Huffs and pants, those types of things, moans, and even things like rolling rocks, breaking twigs, the natural things. These are all sounds that they have no clue. They know it's another elk. And because they've heard the raking, they know it's a bull. You can even use horns and rattle with those. I mean, that even is a great idea to use, especially early season. These are all early season tactics. And really, my bread and butter for killing animals was September 1st to September 7th. And generally is from either the 2nd to the 7th or the 1st to the 5th, because I only had 5 days to hunt before I had to go.
And you're just playing on their curiosity that whole time.
Curiosity, buddy mode, right?
Okay.
And then even if you do have some of them that are looking for cows, when I'm moving through areas and I'm doing that little mew, or I throw out a mew with a little calf call or something like that, then they're going to come in and even check that out, because they don't know that there's not a small bull with them already. They don't, or maybe they're interested in them because those young bulls are going to try to gather those cows first before the big bulls do. So there's a lot of reason to do these types of vocalizations in early season. And the difference is, though, man, is you have to be aware. You have to be aware with your eyes. You got to be aware with your ears, with your nose. And you really got to look for them critters and listening for things like twigs breaking and like rocks rolling or a thud on the ground. You got to be listening and looking for those little bit of color movement, not looking.
So you're not moving super fast through the woods then?
No, not at all. In fact, there's places that as I'm going, and I totally believe this, Matt, if something tells you to stop, stop.
Okay.
If you have this sixth sense and you just feel something about a place, listen to it, right? Pay attention, look around, right? And then, nothing happens. Take a few more steps as you're moving. As you're moving, don't worry about the noise. Move with the noise and give a little mew out while you're doing it. It's a seller. it's elk doing elk things, and that's attractive to elk right there. So
Does your how you're moving through the country, does it change through the time of the day?
say that again.
So as you're moving through the country and you're making these moves, do you change how you're doing that in the time of the day
Not
from like
really.
early morning to afternoon?
I change where I'm at, right?
Okay.
So, like, if I'm going to do that during a midday, man, I want to be up there just in those areas off of those bedding areas or in those darker areas where animals might be moving at that point in day, you know. Um, I don't want to be down in the bottom of an area where their night feed is at the middle of the day calling, right? That's not going to do me any good. So I really like to hunt transition areas at a certain time of day. So in the morning when animals are moving from feed to go to bed, I like to be in those transitions between there.
Okay.
All right. And then as we start getting towards that midday, I want to be where they're going to be at midday. And then as it's starting to get to evening, I again want to be in those transition areas. I think actually the evening transition areas are a better hunt than the morning transition areas because in the morning it just seems like
They're out of there.
it seems like it's so much quicker going to where they want to go, right?
Yeah, I've noticed that.
But in the evening, they're going to take their time before they go to any openings to where they're going to feel safe once it gets evening or dark. And so they're going to take advantage and move through feed or what I call, like semi-feed areas that are covered in trees, opportunity areas, opportunity
They're
graves.
browsing.
Yeah, they're just browsing as they're going, but they're big grass eaters too, right? So they're going to hit some browse, but they're going to hit a lot of areas that are grass that it might be a little bit open in there, but it's not that big opening that you can see forever. It's like within the thick, there's an opening in there, right? That provides areas for them to get grass, or there might be more sparse trees. So there is some kind of coverage. There is a little bit of shade happening, and they can step into, thick stuff in a matter of a second or two. So, I really think they get out of bed and they start hitting those areas as they're moving down, and I think those transitions are a great place in the evening. I never wait at the destination in the evening. I don't want to be down at the bottom waiting for them. I want to be where they're up and where they're moving, because if an animal is moving, you have an advantage. If an animal is bedded and still, or if they're stopped and they're staring, you're at a disadvantage because they are so much better at surviving in that than you are.
Yeah, that midday time when you're getting close to their bedrooms, are you sneaking in quietly, or are you still okay with breaking branches and moving rocks and stuff like that?
Yeah. So, for me, I've done two different things. If you're in public land where there's a lot of people, I'll get in those bedding areas and I'll move through them pretty stealthy, but I'm making a sound here and there. I'm not making a whole lot of noise, but I'm making a sound here and there, and I'm throwing a little cow or calf call out, right?
Okay.
I'm not hammering it, but I want them to know that something's moving through there. And I've had bulls get up out of their beds to come over and check it out and shoot them in that area. So, or if you're in, for our case in private land, we don't want to necessarily go into the bedding areas. We don't want to push them out. So we'll either be off of it and try to call them out over to us, right? So that's another thing. And you can do that in public as well. We
have that over where we're at. If we push them out of their bedrooms, they're straight onto the private land. So we got to be real careful.
Absolutely. So you can actually just be off in that midday and just try to pull them over to you, man, just by sounding like elk doing elk things, right? Okay. So you could be a bull that's got some cows, calves with it. You can just do cows or cows, calves over there, so that bull comes to look for that. You can do like what we call a love straighted type bull where, bull's wanting to breed with a cow and she's not letting him,
Would you do all this stuff in the early season still?
Absolutely, man. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I don't mind doing it early season, because early season there's going to be a lot of, love straighted bulls because those cows aren't going to be ready and accepting, right? So, yeah. Yeah, you can do that. You can do that time of year.
So how does your strategies change if we were to start talking about peak rut?
So it doesn't change a whole lot, really, other than you got more vocal bulls a lot of times. And so you got to either have a strategy for trying to get at that bull if you want to get the so-called herd bull. Herd bulls change all the time, y'all. People are like, I killed the herd bull. Well, they might not be a herd bull 2 days later.
They're just saying it's a herd bull because that's what they want to say.
Yeah. There's a lot of times when I'm actually, when there's bulls that are screaming, that means there's going to be bulls in the wings. And when I'm going in, I'm actually trying to pull some of them over. It's going to be hard for me to pull that main bull away from his cows because he has cows already. But you got these satellites. And when you hear satellite, doesn't mean small. It just means it's a satellite bull.
It means it's smaller than the bull.
They can be, yeah. So then that, you're just waiting on that bull to, you can pressure him. You can do some things and get on him. If he's like only a single bull with a few cows, there's definitely ways that you can get after that. But if you have multiple bulls going on, man, you can be that low-hanging fruit. You can be other things on the outside to pull them over to you, those satellites down there, to get great opportunities. And you can get opportunity after opportunity in that situation because you get one to come in.
Stay on the outside and just do some cow calling.
Yeah, but you can actually be a herd bull yourself.
Okay.
You can be that herd bull doing things and having those cows that are going off and they're doing the chirps, that are doing the whines, little calves going on, because when I have animals on private property that are doing a rut fest, we just do the same thing 600, 800 yards in on the public land and pull those guys that are getting their butts kicked, that are not getting the opportunities. They're like, well, I'm going to go try that new area right there.
Yeah.
So as long as you sound like elk doing elk things, when we go through the woods bugling, we're waiting to hear another animal bugle so we can go to it. That's the same thing these satellites that are cruising are doing, man. When they're letting out their sound and they're advertising where they're at, and they finally get enough, they're going to the elk, man. They're so much like us. They're hunting a lot like we are. So keep that in mind, that you're not the only one waiting to hear an elk sound. So if you give off the elk sounds, if you give off that paint that picture of elk doing elk things, you can absolutely bring elk into you. So
if you're creating this scenario where you're a herd of elk and you got your own rut going on, how long would you wait before you move on? Would you give it some time to see if something moves in on you?
Dude, you're absolutely going to give it time, because elk move in elk time. And if I'm committed to painting a picture and putting on a scenario because I have heard, seen, or smelt, or have the sign that I know that there's critters close, then yeah, I'm going to be committed for 40, 45, 50 minutes. Okay.
How long when you're making these rut parties, how long is typically your actual calling sequence? Are you talking 10 minutes, half an hour?
No. So think about a rut fest. Think about what you're hearing when you hear a bunch of elk. We're the same way, right?
Okay.
You're going to hear an elk that's going to pop off over here. Then you're going to get a response. Some of them are going to be cutting each other. Some of them are going to be right off. It might set for a second, and then one goes off, and then there's an answer, and then a boom, boom. There's a couple of other answers, and then you have the cow talk that's happening inside there. Just picture what you hear when you can't get in on a rut fest, dude. That's what you're reproducing, right? And that doesn't mean you can't move it. You can move it up to another ridge. You can move it through the forest. You can do that absolutely. You can take it and bring it back. We do a lot of movement and we do a lot of sounds like that. And there's other things that we do too. Once I've seen one, like I have something that I borrow from our baseball coaching experience. And it's called a cow pickle, where actually we have the herd move away and then have a lost cow come back, like looking for the herd, and try to get those bulls that might be out there going, oh, there it is right there. So yeah, It's there's different strategies like that you can use. Just creating and painting a picture of those elk doing elk things, man.
Just do what the elk are doing.
Do what the elk are doing. Yeah. I just gotta let you know, I'm gonna have to be off in about 8 minutes here for another thing that I'm doing. So I want to make sure if there's anything closing or anything you need from me.
I think the last thing I want to run through is just maybe a couple basic things that you look for when you're doing your setups.
So when I'm doing my setups, if I have the opportunity to make the choice in the setup, I'm looking to be in the shadows. I'm looking to have my cover behind me, not in front of me. I'm not trying to hide from anything. The shadows are going to give me what I need. And if I can, I want to choose for my setup to be tight. In other words, I want to be within effective shooting range of any type of screens that elk are going to have to come through, or terrain that they're going to have to come over, or, from the bottom or come over from the top. I always want to be in what I call, what I call my stop and scan locations, where an elk's going to come through, where they should see another elk, and they're going to stop and look, right? Because they should see another elk there. When they come up over a hill and you've been calling, the problem is most guys, they call from they don't recognize where they're at and where the edge of the hill is, and they're calling at the hill, and now they're 80, 90 yards from it, and a bull comes over and sticks its head up and looks and doesn't see anything. You just see this, and then it comes up on top and it's looking around. It's like, I know I should see an elk here, right? And you're still 80, 90 yards from where that animal comes over. Or you're in real open forest because you want to see the animal coming at 100 yards. Well, if you can see that animal coming at 100 yards, then they should be able to see another elk because you've been calling there. And I'll tell you, I'll give you the secret. The big secret to a lot of my success is I use a flexible tube. I wear that flexible tube so that I can face forward. And anytime I'm working an animal that's coming to me, all my calls are going behind me. And
that way they think you're farther away.
My calls are bouncing 30, 40 yards behind me, and yet I can see everything that animal does. If that animal starts to come to me, my bow's up, I drop it down, and I'm already locked in and I'm ready to shoot. It hides everything. If he starts to go the wrong way, and I have done this, fellas, I've turned them because they were going the wrong way and steered them right into me, okay, by throwing the calls in a different direction. Most of the time, the bull's going to hang up 80, 90 yards out there, right? Because they feel like they should see another elk. Well, if I'm throwing my calls so if they're bouncing 40 yards behind me and he locks at 80 yards, he's only 40 yards from me.
Yep.
Changes the game. So
that's super important with your setups, is making sure that you're calling behind you. That way they think you're farther away.
Absolutely.
Give yourself a chance.
So here's the thing. If you're hunting with a partner, it makes it so much better because you have the shooter and you got the partner back there that's able to call and pull the animal by you. If you're hunting solo, you got to be both the shooter and the caller. The only way you can do that is by deceiving where your calls are coming from.
Yep.
Shooters here, calls are back there, right? So, big key. Big key.
Well, Joe, we really appreciate you coming on today.
Yeah, it was awesome.
No, thanks, man. Thanks for you get this motor started. It's hard for me to stop, man. I love what I do.
We can sit here and talk all day.
Talking elk is a lot of fun.
Thank you, fellas.
All right, well, enjoy the rest of your day.
Hey, you guys have a great one, and good luck with the podcast. Hope to see you on the mountains one day.
Thanks, buddy.
Thank you.
Later, guys.